I'm with Elana Heideman from Israel Forever Foundation, and we're talking about the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. Now, Elana, what is Sukkot?
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. Sukkot is the festival of huts, as we would call it in English. The sukkah is a hut that represents the temporary home that was built and lived in by the Jews during our 40 years in the desert. As a commandment, we are told by God in the Torah that as a reminder of our time, we will have 7 days that we sit and sleep and eat and make prayers inside of our sukkah, our hut, where we will be able to recognize how temporal our life is, that we take ourselves intentionally out of our permanent homes. We go into this temporary space. It's all not the most sturdy. There's temporary walls. There's a temporary roof. And it gives us this sense of awe at how strong our faith is that we as the Jewish nation were able to overcome year after year of all of the obstacles we faced, and this is our annual reminder.
So, whereabouts do you see all these sukkahs all over the land?
Oh gosh, you see them all over the land and you see them all over the world, interestingly enough. We have all over Israel on every family's balcony or garden and in the communal spaces as well. You see the sukkahs being built of a variety of different materials. Every restaurant in Israel has a sukkah so that you can, because the commandment is that we should be eating inside the sukkah. We also have the commandment of sleeping inside the sukkah, so we want to make sure that the top of the sukkah is made of reeds and leaves, but that we are still able to see the stars in the sky. So you'll see them always in a space where there is no roof above. And there are lots of Jewish laws, halakha, that apply to how you can build your sukkah. What are the laws that make it kosher? And what are the requirements that allow us to fulfill this beautiful mitzvah? And this is one of the most important mitzvahs that is established also to be enacted in the land. It is a great mitzvah to build your sukkah in the land of Israel. And it's important to emphasize for today's world that these are commandments that are 3,000 years old. And the sukkahs that stand today have stood in communities for all of the years of our exile all over the world. So we continue this practice every single year. In the diaspora, it is 8 days, and in Israel, it is 7 days. Many of the holidays have an added day when it's in the diaspora because they are distant from our holy land and the site of our holy temple that had been destroyed.
Whereabouts is your sukkah, and what will you be doing in yours?
Oh, well, we just start, as many people do, right after the fast of Yom Kippur. We start building the frame and we start to decorate our sukkahs. Mine is facing the absolute most gorgeous Judean mountains this year. We are going to be welcoming my beautiful family inside, and we spend a lot of time in there just trying to appreciate that temporary feeling and questioning, what does this all mean for us? There's a very special tradition where we welcome what's called ushpizin. We welcome holy guests. And this is a reminder of Abraham when he would open up his tent and he would welcome those who were walking by into his tent. So we're always welcoming our ancestors, our leaders throughout history. And this year, we're encouraging people to think of who are the guests you would invite into your sukkah. Would they be hostages, hostage families, soldiers, injured soldiers, bereaved soldiers' families, that we extend our guest list, so to speak, not only to our immediate family and not only to the ancestors of generations ago, but to the heroes of today, the people that we would love to learn from and be inspired by as we go through this very, very spiritual time.
Is this a biblical holiday, and do people go to Jerusalem for this holiday?
It is one of the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage holidays where people do go to Jerusalem. They do a walk from all over the country. Many people walk and they go for the Birkat HaKohanim, the Kohanic blessing at the Western Wall. And 100,000 people will show up throughout the course of these days in order to receive these blessings and to be a part of its power. And one of the most important things that we have to think about when it comes to the mitzvot of Sukkot is, what are we holding? You asked before, what do we do inside the sukkah? We have inside the sukkah and in our synagogues, and you'll see people carrying them around everywhere, is a lulav and etrog. The lulav is a three-part branch. It starts with the branch of the palm tree, and then there is the arava and the hadass. And I'm totally going to forget the names in English right now. My apologies. But we have the different branches that come together, four different styles that come together to create this tall stick, as some people think it looks like, a stick with leaves, and we shake it. And all four of these elements that are coming together, the fourth being the etrog, this is a citron, and it has, and at the end, it has the little tip to it. And when you make the blessing, you turn the tip up or down, depending on where you are in your blessings. And there's all sorts of symbolism to this amazing and very odd practice that many people are like, this is the weirdest thing they've ever seen. But when you take these four species and you hold them together, and we shake them over our heads and to our left and our right and in front and in back of us, we are reminded of the many different types of Jews coming together, that we are stronger. And when we shake it all around, we are reminded that God is everywhere. And so all of the blessings of Sukkot are to remind us that Hashem is with us. He is with us everywhere. We want to continue to be grateful. We've been already immersed in a very deep time of prayer between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the 10 days of repentance. We've heard the shofar. Now we're moving into our temporary homes, and we shake the lulav. We hear the blessings of the Kohanim. We hear the songs of everyone, and it is a full week of celebration. You'll find also a practice that amongst especially the religious, no one works. This is a time when everyone is taking break from doing things that are not connected to the miracles that we're celebrating through Sukkot. Yes, for those who can, they can go to Yerushalayim. And there are other places throughout the country that many people in Israel love to travel. It's a very big week of traveling. And unfortunately, because of the war, we're going to see that that's a little bit condensed. We're not able to travel to the north where we so often travel this time of year, the area of the Galil and the Golan. We're really under a very severe attack. And I'll add that this year's Sukkot have also the element of sadness. We are still over 373 days now of war. We are seeing soldiers fall. We have 101 hostages still captive at the hands of evil. And we remember that our Sukkot stood, all of them, for a long time after October 7th, because none of us could have the strength to take them down. Even in the communities in the south that were destroyed, most of them still have their sukkahs even standing still to today, because they've been left as they were on the day of the massacre. It's a very uplifting time. It's a challenging time for us today as well, while we live in a continued war.
These four things that they carry with the etrog and everything, do they carry them throughout the day, throughout the holiday?
It depends on who. Some people, yes. Some people, no. We do not carry them, and we do not shake the lulav on Shabbat. But the rest of the days of what we call Chol HaMoed, the days in between, the days of the festival, basically. And in between those days, yes, you'll see people wandering around and they have these little plastic sacks for their lulav. And you'll find the most amazing and intricate cases for etrog. I mean, people really invest all of their heart and soul into picking the precise right etrog for their prayers. It's a very intricate holiday as many people enjoy the experience. We're reminded, by the way, of the 7 species of the land of Israel that also get incorporated, and I'll go ahead and add that they get incorporated into our recipes and the different traditions that get passed down from different Jewish cultures, elements of Jewish culture, whether it's the foods that we eat. We continue to have pomegranate. We have often pumpkin gourds and things like that, things that remind us of the harvest time as well. That the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. We also change our prayer and add a prayer for the coming of the rainy season. So it is a very significant and symbolic time, even when you're carrying your lulav and even when you're not.
What does an etrog look like? I imagine a lot of people in the UK don't know what an etrog is. What does it look like? And do you grow them here in Israel?
You're right about that. A lot of people don't know what it looks like, and there are only a few places in the world. Yes, there is an etrog farm here in Israel, but we actually get them from other places as well. But it looks like a lemon. It looks kind of like a big, harder lemon. The skin has a very unique citrus smell. And in the old days, when they couldn't always get an etrog, they would really search high and low throughout the world where they could be found. And there are some crazy stories that we've inherited that about the extent to which people have gone in order to find a lulav and etrog. Today, the majority, I think they come from Italy. There's a very unique place in Italy. I'm going to forget the name. I want to say Calabria, I think it's called, which is where they have this massive etrog grove. And that's where we get a lot of them coming from.
So a lot of them will be exported into Israel at this time of the year.
Well, we hope so. You know, the two countries that I know we've exported from, I think it's Italy. What's the other one? I think it's Morocco. But I know that the growers in Israel have struggled tremendously because, of course, as I'm sure most everyone knows, agriculture has been dramatically destroyed by the attacks, by the endless missile fire, even the arson terrorism and other efforts to bring about environmental terrorism, agricultural terrorism. So unfortunately, those aren't numbers that I have, but I know that there are challenges this year, and just like every year, we do our best to face them, to stay positive, and to use each of our holidays as an opportunity to examine the tough times we're living through and how we are to gain strength and to continue onward in spite of it all.
What sort of scriptures do you read at this time of the year?
So there are a lot of different, because there are so many different parts to the holiday. We read a couple of the portions that talk about the festival itself, talks about the use of animals in sacrifices. We also have the singing of many psalms, Tehillim, the Shirim HaMa'alot. They are attributed to the ancient practices even during temple times. So there are a lot of different books that we read. And in many, on the Shabbat that falls in between, we'll read the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Kohelet, where we are reminded that there is a time for every season. There's a time for dance. There's a time for tears. And you know, it's such a poignant way to also remind that the final day of Sukkot is Simchat Torah, where we celebrate the receiving of the Torah, and we begin the reading of the Torah anew. We've completed the last chapter of Leviticus, and we move on to Bereshit again. There's beautiful practices. We open the Torah and we re-roll it to its beginning, and we dance with the Torah. And unfortunately, last year, on the morning of Simchat Torah, when we woke up on that Black Shabbat to the news of the massacre having begun at 6:29 in the morning, we know that this year's Simchat Torah is going to be a celebration of Torah and life under a shadow in the valley of death. It is a very difficult time. And that, again, reminds us of the importance of our biblical writings. The book of Ecclesiastes reminds us again, there's a time for everything. There's a time for suffering. What do we do after these times for suffering? That is the challenge that God gives each of us. And we're really facing that challenge right now more than ever.
So this Simchat Torah is going to be a very painful memories, isn't it, of what happened with the massacre?
I think that it's going to be a challenge, to be honest. I think that most celebrations are going to be very downplayed. It is the anniversary of the Jewish date, the Yartzeit, as we say, the Hazkara, on the Jewish calendar. And I don't think there's anyone who can feel like last year we danced and we danced and we sang and we were filled with joy. No one could know what was going to happen the following morning. I wonder, how are we going to get through this? And then I'm reminded as a Holocaust educator all my life that they were able to find a shofar so as to blow it on Rosh Hashanah and then at the end of Yom Kippur, even in Birkenau. That there were Jews who fasted on Yom Kippur, even in Birkenau and in the ghettos. And that they were able, even in the ghettos, to celebrate Simchat Torah. And they had smuggled in a small Torah. There's a famous story I know of a man I met who was a 11-year-old, and he and his brother, they wanted to be able to bring one of the Torahs into the ghetto. They were being moved into the ghetto from Kovne in Lithuania. And they said to the rabbi, we want to be able to bring the Torah. And the rabbi said, no, you can't, because it's gonna risk your life. And the children decided anyway. And what they did was they unrolled one of the children's Torah, a smaller Torah, and they unrolled it, and they wrapped it around their bodies, underneath their clothes, when they were moved with their families into the ghetto. And so they too were able to celebrate quietly, secretly, so that the Nazis would not know. And they were able to say, thank you, God, for giving us this Torah. Because the Torah is the answer to knowing the good of the world. The Torah is the answer to being able to eradicate evil in the world. And so when we dance this year on Simchat Torah, maybe it will awaken in some, maybe not a celebration of the joy, but of appreciation. And it's very hard to tell. I think there will be a lot of tears throughout this next week. We have family members who are honoring the fallen family who were murdered on October 7th. They do not all have the same memorial date of passing. It's a very heavy and difficult time. And again, we've now lost several soldiers over the last couple of days, and over 100 have been injured just in the last 48 hours. And it's just very challenging. It's a challenging time for the Jewish people. It's a challenging time for all of humanity.
Yeah, we've just had this drone strike from Hezbollah, which killed 4 Israeli soldiers. I imagine this is a very worrying time as you go into this Jewish holiday.
We were asked by the whole world, as we are every year, that there is a war forced upon us where we have to defend ourselves, to respect Ramadan for a whole month, to have an unwanted cease of firing and seeking out of terrorists out of respect for Ramadan. And yet on Yom Kippur, over 320 missiles were fired at Israel, one hitting an elderly home in Herzliya. Now, we're lucky that no one is injured, not that the world cares about our injured. And we're lucky that nobody's dead, and only dead Jews really ever make the news anyway. We are very lucky because Israel has built, instead of Sukkot only, they have built safe rooms. And for that reason alone, less casualties to these missiles have been suffered. But here as we enter into Sukkot, and we know that on Yom Kippur, our holy days are not respected, our humanity is not respected. We know that every minute of the day we are at risk. It's a sensitive time, but it's also a time where I think people are seeking that hope desperately. And we can only wish that maybe God will open the eyes of more people in the world to be more involved, to be doing more, to help procure the peace that we deserve. And that is not by appeasing Hamas, Hezbollah, or any of the Iranian proxies or Iran itself. It will require the entirety of the world to stand up against these elements and to stand with Israel. So it's a fearful time, but it's one we're not willing to let dominate. You will see celebrations, and you'll see joy, and we'll see our soldiers on video dancing with the Torah as well. but we will be doing so with a broken heart. And maybe that's something that Jewish people have been having to endure generation after generation, sadly.
Are there more security alerts during the holidays?
Many, many more security alerts, a different system also set into place. There are rabbis who institute laws that dictate you should be having your phone with you at all times, which is something that an observant Jew would not be doing, even during the highest holy days of our year. We also have fear of infiltrations because they know that many people are in synagogues and are out celebrating. There's a fear of infiltrations in communities, and we've seen a couple, especially in the north. But the warnings are high. The terror activity increases. We have seen also civilians exposing themselves as actively involved in terror, and that becomes an added element of the fear factor that we have to live with, because you never know who to trust anywhere that you walk.
What is your prayer for this Sukkot?
The temporary hut of peace, we say that you should lufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, that you should spread over us the sukkah of your peace, the covering of your peace. My prayer for the world is that we can be embraced and enveloped in that peace that we deserve, that the world will join with Israel in fighting tyranny, that we will not see any more of our people fall or be injured, and that more leaders in the world will do more and stop falling for the trap of the political issues and the controversial matters that are based on lies and distortions about Israel. So if you spend 7 days of Sukkot learning your facts, then you have, I believe, also been a part of achieving the spreading of the sukkah of peace over the Jewish people, over Israel, and all of the world.
What is your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
IsraelForever.org. It is a home for you to come and learn and engage and get resources that you can use in the comfort of your life. We have recipes for Sukkot, stories about Sukkot, and we hope that you can come and join our global community of virtual citizens of Israel who recognize themselves as a part of the armies of people that need and want to be serving the world for good.
Well, Elana, thank you very much for sharing about the holiday of Sukkot today.
Thank you so much for having me.